Inspiring interviews with today's top landlords. This is the Rental Income Podcast. And now, Dan Lane.
Joe, you've been buying rental properties out of state. Why not just invest where you live?
Well, I am in Northern Virginia, and the prices here are rather high. For example, entry-level price point might be a two-level townhome for $350,000 that would rent for $2,100 or $2,200. And everybody needs to determine what their investing goals are. You're either in it for cash flow or appreciation or some combination of that. Our market is not a great cash flow market, and it is probably one of the best appreciation markets in the country. And my goals were really for retirement and cash flow, so I decided to look elsewhere.
The old saying goes, live where you want to live and invest where the numbers make sense. And that's exactly what Joe's done. He's been very successful in buying rental properties out of state. And to him, buying a rental property in another state is no different than buying a rental property on the other side of town. And on the podcast today, we're going to figure out how Joe's doing this. We'll talk about how he figured out where he wanted to invest, how he found his properties, how he's managing them, and we'll see if he's had any trouble along the way. Joining us on the show from Northern Virginia is Joe Facenda. We'll take a break to thank our sponsors. We'll come right back and we'll talk to Joe. It's a lot of work to find a really good rental property. And when you actually find that property, you want to make sure you're working with a lender that can get that loan closed. The lender that I recommend is Chaley Ridge from Ridge Lending Group. She's a nationwide lender and her specialty is helping investors finance rental properties. She has a ton of loan programs and she can find something customized to you for your situation. If you want to find out more or you're ready to get started today, just go to ridgelendinggroup.com. That's RIDGE lendinggroup.com. NMLS 42056.
Rental Income Podcast.
Joe, before we talk about what you're doing, let's talk about risk for a second, because I think there's probably someone listening to this right now thinking that it's risky to buy a rental property in an area where you don't live. What would you say to that person?
I would say that it is not all that risky if you have the right team in the market where you decide to invest. If you have a good property manager, if you've made some contacts with local contractors, I think you're perfectly fine. In fact, it's easier than local because you just call the people to do the repairs and take care of things, and it's a little bit of an easier job.
Yeah. And do you think the internet has made it a lot easier today than trying to buy out of state maybe 20 years ago?
Absolutely. With the ability to look at properties and do neighborhood tours on Google and all of that, investing outside your market is pretty easy.
So let's hear about what you've done. Tell me about your portfolio.
So my portfolio consists of 10 doors right now. One is local in my market, which I bought many years ago, but the other 9 are outside of the market. I have 5 properties in Fayetteville, property in Greensboro, property in Memphis, Oklahoma City, outside of Philadelphia.
That's a lot of different areas. Is it complicated to keep track of all those properties and all the different cities?
I don't find it complicated. I do think that as I progress in this, I want to concentrate a little bit more and build in specific markets. For instance, I mentioned that I have 5 properties in Fayetteville, and I like that. I think that the next market that I'd like to try to build in would be Oklahoma City. And if some of the other homes that I have came up, the tenants decided to move out, I might consider selling them and moving the money to Oklahoma City.
And dealing with all those different property managers, does that take a lot of work, or is it really not that bad?
Well, I have yet to find the perfect property manager, one who fires on all cylinders. When you have a property manager, you are looking for somebody who can effectively lease the property quickly and at a great price. You're looking for someone who who can handle repairs professionally and quickly, keep the tenants happy, and their paperwork systems are great. And I haven't found anybody who can do all of those things. So each property manager has their strengths and weaknesses. And if I was looking for perfection, I'd never find one. But, if I can get 70 or 80% of what I'm looking for, I'm happy. And generally, no, once I understand how they report and what they do, I don't think it's that difficult to manage.
Well, let's kind of figure out how you did this and how you make everything work. You mentioned you have 5 properties in Fayetteville, so maybe let's talk about that. Mm-hmm. What did you like about Fayetteville?
Well, first of all, let me say that I started several years ago. I started a website called outoftownlandlord.com. It connects investors with investor-oriented realtors around the country. And the reason that I started that is because when I went to Memphis, before I started this website, I had trouble finding an investor-oriented realtor, and I thought others might as well. So I put together this website. And through the website, I saw where leads were going around the country, and Fayetteville happened to be one of the cities that was getting a lot of action. And I looked at it and I thought, wow, you can buy, at the time, you could buy a one level, 1,500 square foot single family home with a garage, 3 bedrooms, 2 baths for somewhere 150, 160. And you could rent it for, 1,200 or so. And, the 1% rule has sort of disappeared. And those were pretty good numbers with what the tax structure and no HOA in these neighborhoods. So I knew that the agent there had successfully completed. David did many transactions for out of town landlord clients, and so I thought, I'll take a look at that. It's within drive. It's about 6 hours from where I live, so I can go down there and take a look, and that's what I did.
So, what did you like about the area? Like, what was there?
Yeah, so it was to me, Fayetteville. What I liked about the area was that the housing stock that I was looking at was newer in the sense it was built since 1990. Second of all, there's a major Army base there. And so the employment around the area is stable. There's always going to be people needing housing and rentals there. And I just felt it was a good cash flow market. I had no expectations for great long-term appreciation, but I did have expectations for good cash flow. And I have received that. And also, over the last few years, been gifted with a little bit of appreciation as well, as many markets have in this country. Yeah.
Now, were you looking online at certain demographic information or growth trends or anything like that? Or was it mainly just based on the numbers that these properties look like solid properties and the neighborhoods look decent?
Yeah, so I think that I didn't really look at growth trends in Fayetteville. I just knew that with the base there that I felt pretty secure that I would always be able to get a tenant. But what I did do, and what I have done in other markets, is I don't feel like I need to actually see the house per se, but I need to know the area and the neighborhood and what type of area it's in. So whenever I decide I'm going to go into a new market, I do take a trip to that city and get listings from the realtor and from look on Zillow and spend all day just driving around and looking at the neighborhoods and trying to see what's nearby and get a sense and a feel for what parts of the city seem to fit my profile and what parts of the city I might want to stay away from. And then the next day, ask the agent to show me 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 of ones that I might have liked driving by. And if one of them is great, then I'll buy it. And if not, I'll go back home and we'll just, work long distance, and that agent will send me properties to review. And if I like something and it's in that area that I liked, I'll buy it.
So for the 5 properties that you bought in Fayetteville, did you go inside all those properties?
Those properties, yeah, I did go inside all of those properties. Actually, you know what? No, the one I went inside, The other one I did not see until after settlement, and I was very happy with it. But I did not see it after settlement. And then I actually then was contacted by somebody who had a 4-property portfolio in Fayetteville they wanted to sell. And I did go down and take a look at all 4 of those properties, and I did buy the portfolio. But I just recently sold off one of those properties, which didn't quite fit the type of property that I'm looking for. And so now, a month ago I had 6. Now I have 5 in Fayetteville.
Okay. All right. So you found a property. Everything looks good with it. You're happy with the neighborhood. Do you get a home inspection?
Absolutely. I have, I do home inspections on everything that I buy, and I wouldn't buy without it, because I am long distance. And even though I've gone into a couple of these properties, sometimes I've gone into them, sometimes I bought without seeing them. I really want a home inspection. And, buying out of the area, this is probably the scariest part of buying out of the area. I am a realtor. I've been a realtor for 30 years. I've done hundreds. I've worked with buyers on hundreds and hundreds of home inspections. And I always counsel them, well, this is not that serious. It looks worse on paper and this and that. And that's true. But when you look at the report and you haven't seen the property, even somebody like me can get a little bit nervous saying, oh, that doesn't look good on paper, So I actually need, even me, I need to rely on the agent there to help walk me through what I'm actually seeing on paper. But I do want to have a home inspection because I do need to know if, most importantly for me, are there safety issues in the house that would impact the ability of a tenant to have a safe place to live. And I also want to prepare for any major expenses down the road. How old's the roof, the furnace, all of those types of things. So, and I have in the past backed out because there were structural issues that I did not want to deal with. And I a lot of investors will say, oh, structural issues, it's a chance to buy a property for less and add value and all that, fix it up. It's not anything that I want to deal with from a long distance standpoint. I'm looking not turnkey per se, but close to it.
Sure.
And a lot of properties in Fayetteville have crawl spaces, and not until you get inspected down that crawl space do you know it's actually there. And I have backed out of deals because of that.
Now, you've bought your properties using local agents. Mm-hmm. Have you had any experience working with turnkey companies?
I have not had any experience working with turnkey companies, but let me share with you, when I first started to do this, I went, the first city I bought in out of the area, well, the first city I bought in was Greensboro many, many years ago, but that's because we had friends there and I understood the market and it really was pretty easy. But when I first made this a strategy, the first city that I went to was Memphis. I had been at some real estate investor convention somewhere and met some Memphis turnkey operators. And I thought, well, that sounds like a really great idea, but let me explore the city. So I went to the city on a 2-day visit. The first day I got addresses from the turnkey operator, properties that they had renovated. I wanted to see, what they were doing and where they were. And I didn't like the neighborhoods. And I also didn't care as much for the prices based on things I was seeing elsewhere. The second day, I went out with a local agent who had real estate investing experience, and I found a property that I liked very much, and we bought it. It was much lower priced than the turnkey operator, and in a much better area. And I felt like I had more selection going with a realtor and looking at everything on the market than I would with a turnkey operator who had, just whatever they're currently had in inventory. Right. So I'm not, there might be reasons to use a turnkey operator, but for me, I felt more comfortable working with a local agent.
Now, can you compare what it's like? You mentioned you have one property that's local to where you live. Mm-hmm. Can you compare how it's different with that property versus your out of town properties? Do you ever go to that property?
I occasionally go to that property. I have been fortunate, so fortunate, that I have had the same tenants in that property since 2008.
Wow. Awesome.
which is pretty darn amazing. And I keep their rent below market, and occasionally they call me and I do have to go to the property to take a look at a particular problem or whatever. And I will tell you it's not hard. I mean, I go to the property. I am not a handy person. Last year, we had to replace a sliding glass door, and which involved also replacing a floor because of a leak or whatever. And so I just called the contractor. I went out to take a look, and I called the contractor to take care of it. But out of town, it's a little bit easier. They go take a look at these problems. I don't have to waste my time going to the property to take a look at the problem. So I like out of town. It's just a lot easier for me.
Yeah. So it sounds like it's been working out great. Like, has anything bad happened?
Well, there are two instances where bad things have happened, so to speak. I'll never forget that one time. I no longer own a property down in the Norfolk area, but at one point I had a townhouse down there, and a property manager. And I remember that I was sitting at lunch one Friday afternoon, and I got a call from the property manager. And when I saw it on my cell phone, I knew that can't be good. And they told me that, remember that fence repair that we had scheduled for today? I said, yeah, no problem. Yeah, I remember that. They said, well, we went there and there was water pouring out of your front door onto the street. So a pipe had burst. And of course, the tenant had gone away for the weekend. And worse, the tenant had actually changed the lock on the property, so they couldn't get in. So they had to get somebody from the street. But, here's the thing. I was sitting at lunch and I thought, well, okay, that's pretty bad. I'll call the insurance company and I'll call these people and they'll all take care of it and I'll continue to have my lunch. Mm-hmm. So I didn't really worry about it. And the other instance was more recent, where down in Fayetteville, at one of the properties, a tenant had moved out, and the property manager went in and they moved out, and we found that they had started a small kitchen fire, which required basically an entire kitchen renovation, since the fire touched the cabinets, the floor, appliances, counter, all that. So,
well, and those are all things that could have happened if they were local rentals. I mean, those are
Absolutely.
just things that are going to happen.
But sometimes things happen that could be more expensive because you are out of town. Let me give you one example of something that happened to me. In a market that I'm no longer in, I had a single family home, and the tenant called the property manager saying that a tree on my property was leaning towards the house, and she felt the tree was potentially a problem. The property manager sent out somebody to look at the tree. The property manager called me and said it would be $1,200, $1,400, something like that, to take the tree down. I asked if I could get a second estimate. Sometimes plumbers, electricians, and a lot of the trades, they're pretty much going to be roughly the same. But big stuff like trees and roofs, there could be vastly different costs involved. Well, anyway, this property manager said that their policy was only to get one estimate for any repair, which shocked me. And I can't remember whether I just insisted they get a second estimate or whether I found somebody on my own, but somebody else did go out and said, no, we don't need to take the tree down. We just need to take a couple of branches off for a few $100s, and saved me quite a bit of money. So my lesson was that I had gone with the biggest property manager in town, who was perhaps a little too bureaucratic for my tastes. And from that point on, I always ask property managers, can you get more than one estimate, and what is your policy with tradespeople to make sure that I could always get the best cost.
Yeah, so it doesn't sound like buying out of town has been that hard. I mean, it seems like it was fairly simple for you to do this.
Fairly simple. And again, if you have a trusted realtor in the market, any realtor who works with investors knows that an investor is not usually one and done. They're looking to buy multiple properties to build a portfolio. They want to provide good service. They want to give you great referrals to contractors. So if you have that team in place, when these things happen, it's not that hard. You just have to call your contractors to go do what they need to do to make the repair and to fix it. And yes, I make trips down to Fayetteville once every year or so, just to sort of look at things, see how the properties are doing and how the tenants are taking care of them. And just because I want to, I don't have to, but I want to. And, but yeah, I find it to be pretty easy.
Joe, you were with us on the show about 5 years ago. And at that time, you were buying rentals in your IRA. Are you still doing that today?
Correct. Everything that I buy, of the 10 doors that I do have currently, 2 I bought before I learned about using a self-directed IRA to invest, and the other 8 are all in the IRA. And just really quick on that, I'd mentioned that I sold one property in Fayetteville recently in the IRA. It was in the IRA. The beautiful thing about the IRA is those proceeds now are back in my IRA account. I have no time pressure to do anything with them. It's not a taxable event. And I'm trying to decide whether or not I'm going to take those proceeds and take them to Oklahoma City, or take those proceeds and pay off a mortgage on another property and increase cash flow that way. So I'm analyzing both options, and I have no time pressure to decide when I need to do these things.
Yeah, that's an interesting point. With a 1031 exchange, you do have a very tight time frame to make it work, and with the IRA, you don't. Like, you really can take your time. That's a big advantage. So tell me your game plan with the rentals. Like, so you're buying properties, they're generating cash flow. At some point, like, are you going to start taking the cash flow out when you retire?
Yeah. So again, this is in a self-directed IRA, and the R stands for retirement. So I will probably in a few years, as I start to slow down in my real estate business, start to take that out, and that will be what I live on, and so I will be taking the proceeds, the rents out, going forward at some point. But right now I'm letting them stay and build. And I think I probably want to, I probably need to get about another 2 or 3 properties to get to where I want to be for retirement purposes.
So the cash flow that comes in right now, you let that build up, and then that helps you buy your next property?
Buy the next property or pay off mortgages to increase cash flow that way.
If you want to learn more about buying rental properties with your IRA, I did a show with Joe about 5 years ago where we talked about why he thinks it's a great idea to use your retirement money to buy rental properties. And we also talked to another investor, Corey Binsfield, who thinks it's a horrible idea to buy rental properties with your retirement account. And I think it was interesting to hear both sides and use that to kind of help you decide what's right for you. If you want to check out that episode, it's number 204 from April 2nd, 2019. And if anybody is interested in investing in Northern Virginia, or you want to check out Joe's website, Out of Town Landlord, I've got a link to all of his sites on my website. You can find it at rentalincomepodcast.com/episode 456. We're always looking for new guests for the podcast. If you're interested in coming on the show and telling your story, reach out to me. I've got my contact information on the website. You can find it at rentalincomepodcast.com. I'd like to thank Chaley Ridge for sponsoring today's episode. If you're looking to buy a rental property, whether you're just getting started or you want to add to your portfolio, reach out to Chaley. She's got a bunch of different loan options, and she can find something that'll work for you in your situation. If you want to find out more, or you want to talk to Chaley personally, just go to ridgelendinggroup.com. That's RIDGE lendinggroup.com, NMLS 42056. Thank you so much for checking out the podcast today. I'll be back with a new interview next Tuesday. My name is Dan Lane, and this has been the Rental Income Podcast.